Now, the special prosecutor, Martin Alamisi Ben Kaiser Amidu, is stating categorically that his office does not have the mandate to investigate financial and economic crimes. And more importantly, the raging power distribution services company limited scandal. That is the crux of our conversation today. After this break, I'll let you know who my guests are and the crux of our conversation and what the impact is on the man's office, especially when he is the biggest arrow in the quiver of this government to fight corruption. You're welcome back. This is Upfront. I'll soon be going to the phone lines and speaking to one man who understands that particular office and its mandate fully. Pretty much so. But the good news coming from, or bad news, if you want, depends on how you want to consider, is that Special Prosecutor Martin Amidu has been categorical in his mind that his office will not be in the position or does not have the mandate to investigate financial and economic crimes, and more importantly, the raging PDS scandal. This is because a grouping called Good Governance Advocacy Ghana Limited served notice that it was going to make sure that that office prioritizes this particular issue, mindful of the amount of money involved and the assets of the ECG, which you're told are into somewhere beyond 17 billion cedis in this particular case. But what they want investigated are issues of fraudulent activities or supervision or corruption, nepotism, cronyism, favoritism, and usurpation of another minister's powers. Those are the issues that the grouping demanded that they ought to be investigated by the special prosecutor. These are things he says my mandate might not necessarily extend to. We'll be going into the details of the statement he's issued out there, right from where he is currently, and the issues that many are still raising with what's currently happening on this particular one. My guest in studio is a law lecturer at the law faculty at the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, that's GIMPA. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
His name is Justice Shemsai, and you are consistently reminded that he's a Harvard-trained lawyer. That they say a lot in this country. Well, I'm going to the phone lines in a second to speak to John Indebugri, who's been a member of parliament for Zebila, who's also a lawyer, who understands perhaps the functions of Martin Amidu, and has worked with him in times past, much more than I know of anybody. Within the periods that both said up north in various capacities during the PNDC and maybe in the NDC period too. Well, I should be able to get him to speak on this matter in a second. But you're welcome once again, sir.
Thank you very much.
So, when you immediately heard Mr. Amidu make this comment, which is not the first time, but this time around, he singled out the PDS matter. Of course, some have said that government, because it is involved, could not be in the position to do independent, what they call it, an investigation of its own side. When you heard Martin Amidu say what he said and the statement that he issued out there, what came to mind immediately?
To be honest with you, I was embarrassed, to a very large extent, that he could upfront say this from where he is currently, when there's no evidence that he has actually done any practical examination of the facts or the intended petition that was supposed to be brought to him. I think, you see, Honorable Martin Amidu has a very huge, reservoir of experience when it comes to prosecution. I doubt how many people have done prosecution more than him in this country. And when it comes to the understanding of politics, he's also up there. So in so many capacities, he's the man for the job. But I think some of these things must be looked at critically. All over the world, okay, when prosecutors are working, you first need to have a complaint, a formal complaint, then you conduct what we call preliminary investigations. It is after a preliminary investigation, in another jurisdiction, they call it just cause, just cause. So when you find some preliminary facts, it will be based on those facts that you can actually say that, well, it is worth going forward with this, or it is not worth going forward with that. But to upfront on mere, hearing that people want to petition on facts that are spurious out there. As of now, we don't even know the real facts. There are so many contradictory, statements from both sides. For you to just conclude upfront that you are not able to, or you don't have the capacity or the jurisdiction to investigate the matter, That is very, embarrassing. It's as if you are saying, I'm not interested in this. And let me explain further.
Okay. No, but he busts the wide open. He says that financial and economic crimes are not my forte. Now, first and foremost, more importantly, this particular PDS issue is not something I can go into. Are you saying that it is still too early, premature to make such a comment?
Extremely premature, because look at what we have here. His jurisdiction covers about 10 or so, specific offenses. We have dishonest, receiving, which means that if someone, so you are in possession of something, that thing was procured either by you or someone through fraud or dishonest means, and then you are keeping it or are selling it or have control over the thing, then you'll be asked to explain how you came by it, whether you came by it through honest means. If you look at all the crimes that are listed, they are not crimes that you can just sit down and, on the face of it, know that they have been committed. All of them are crimes that you need to go further. In fact, usually you have to establish one crime first and then trace it from there to be able to establish those ones. So let's go back to dishonestly receiving.
Yeah.
The property in question should have been some property procured through fraud, which means that some crime might have been first committed.
Okay.
And then you, the person in possession of that crime, you have, you came by it knowing very well that it was procured by fraud, and yet you have it, or you want to sell it, or you want to transfer it to someone. Okay. Come to the second one, using public office. That crime itself is not a straightforward crime as maybe someone has stolen, maybe I attack you and I take your laptop. No, it is using subtle means to commit a crime. And that is the nature of political corruption. The politicians themselves don't go public to commit this crime. So what this tells you is that you need to be diligent in the investigation, okay, to be able to arrive at the point that this is something worth further investigations or not. But to be in Ouagadougou, as we are told in the statement, and hear that a group of people intend to petition you on a certain number of crimes, and then you decide that, look, don't even come, it's as if, don't even come to me, just hold on, I can't touch this, find somewhere else to go. But I think as the discussion goes along, I will draw attention to the fault in this whole setup.
Okay.
The fault in this whole
Are you talking about the Office of Special Prosecutor?
Yes, and even the jurisdiction. And that is where I agree partly with Martin Amidu on some of the issues he has raised.
Okay.
For example,
because he makes a point about our very system not necessarily meeting the standards set out in
precisely.
The generalized grouping. That's an issue that we should be able to explore.
Definitely.
But first, let's go to the phone lines, because I did tell you one man that I would be speaking to on this matter is the Honorable John Indebugui. Welcome, sir, to our front.
Thank you, Raymond.
I hope you are doing well this evening.
Well, I'm trying.
Now, let me be clear in my mind, because I know you've done a lot of work on the Office of Special Prosecutor and specifically what it's supposed to do. First and foremost, outline for us what the job of that particular office is. Then we can deal with the other issues.
Well, I mean,
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can now hear you.
Okay, brilliant. So I just wanted a brief appreciation of exactly what the mandate, according to the Act of the Office of Special Prosecutor, says about the job of the Office of Special Prosecutor.
Well, even in Martin Amidu's own epistle, latest epistle, which is the subject of discussion, he defined the functions of the Special Prosecutor. I think they are specifically three basic functions that he is supposed to perform. The first one is to investigate and prosecute cases of alleged corruption and corruption-related offenses under the Public Procurement Act of 2003, which is Act 663. The second one is to investigate allegations of corruption and corruption-related offenses under the Criminal Offences Act of 1960, which is Act 29, implicating public officers, politically exposed persons, and persons in the private sector implicated in the commission of the offense. And the third one is to prosecute corruption and corruption-related offenses involving public officers, politically exposed persons, and persons in the private sector implicated in the commission of the offense. These are the three areas that the special prosecutor or the office of the special prosecutor is supposed to handle. Now, Mr. Amidu's difficulty is that when you go and look at the definition of corruption and corruption-related offenses, the definition specifies certain areas of those laws that have been cited that he can investigate and prosecute under. Under Act 29, he has set out all those sections. Those are the sections 146, 151, 179C, 293, 252, 253, 254, 256, 258, and 260 of that Act 29. And then the Procurement Act, just one section, which is Section 92, subsection 2 of that Act. So his complaint is that, number one, the punishment provided under most of these laws, restrictive laws, the penalty is so small. They are mostly misdemeanors.
Okay.
I find that in his write-up that he complains that they are merely misdemeanors, except one or two that are felonies. And then one has no definition. In fact, that's the 179C. It's under the special offenses. And the penalty is 250, not less than 250 penalty units, or not more than 10 years imprisonment, or both the penalty, the fine, and the imprisonment. So basically, these are the things he's supposed to do. And so you may ask your next question.
Now, the question I'm asking in this case is that the grouping that's demanding that he probes this matter is asking him to do a couple of things. And they were very brief in what they wanted to say. They said they'll be officially submitting a petition for him to actually probe and investigate and prosecute fraudulent activities or supervision over corruption, nepotism, cronyism, favoritism, and usurpation of another minister's powers. Now, to the layperson, they have mentioned corruption here. They have raised other matters, which sounds very close to what you said about the functions of the Office of Special Prosecutor. How then is he not in the capacity to deal with this particular matter?
No, you mean this particular matter, meaning the PDS matter?
Certainly so.
Yes, but you see, that is why my learned friend there in the studio was saying that maybe it was a bit, I don't want to use the word rash, but it was a bit, that's about the best word for him to have decided that it is beyond him. Because even in my experience as a private legal practitioner, there are many occasions where somebody brings me a case and I am minded to dismiss it, to say that, oh, I don't think you have a cause of action, or I don't think you have a defense to this charge. But when I take his statement and I analyze the circumstances under which he is making the claim, or he is defending the claim, or he is defending the charge, I come around to realize that the person, after all, may have had a cause of action, or they have had a defense.
Okay.
So it is actually, I agree with the law lecturer there, that maybe it is more prudent to take the information from the person who is complaining and do some preliminary investigation and do some analysis. And maybe in the course of that, you will realize that you are able to handle the matter.
I get your point. Now, there's a matter that he raised, and it says that the truth is that Section 79 of Act 959 severely restricts the jurisdiction of the Office of Special Prosecutor to fight corruption and corruption-related offenses in Ghana. Unlike in other countries that are fully committed to and adhere to the obligations under the UN Convention Against Corruption, specifically the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption and the ECOWAS protocols in this direction. Is this claim he makes in this particular statement true? Is a provision specifically referencing Section 79 of 959 deficient and not up to the standards that the international bodies have set for virtually every country?
Yes.
You agree with him?
Well, you see, the three areas I read for you, or I mentioned to you, are further clarified by the definition section, which is the Section 79 he's talking about. And that one now restricts him to specific sections that he can use to, in his investigation, or under which he can investigate and prosecute, possibly prosecute persons. And he is of the view that it is restricted, because if you go back and you read the three that I set out first, without going to the definition section to find out what corruption and corruption-related offenses are, you will think that he has a wide, area
to do it.
Space to operate in.
Okay.
But when you go to the definition section, where he has been limited to specific sections, then you begin to agree with him that maybe there's some restriction there. Well, my answer to that I already said at the beginning of this whole matter. That look, I thought that the law was retrograde, that it wasn't going to advance our fight against corruption. And Martin should have known that, because there was no consensus. At least there was no consensus at all, even though it is in the MPC manifesto. Subsequent events have proven that there was no consensus about the appointment of a special prosecutor, or maybe a specific person. And so he should have been careful to look at the law as it was enacted. And then he should even have been part of the process of enacting the law. But because the law was enacted before he was appointed, he ought to have been, he ought to have taken his time to study the law very critically and demanded that maybe certain changes to be made in the law before he would accept the position. But he looked at the law. I know that when the law was in draft form, he objected to certain provisions, certain restrictive provisions.
Yes, in one of his
epistles,
yeah.
They were taken off the bill. I don't know why he did not see the Section 79, which further restricted his ability, the space within which he will operate. So he has very little choice now. Either he demands that they should amend the law to remove those restrictions, or he tries as hard as possible to work within those restrictions as best as he can. And I think that he can do that, because when I look at section 179C of Act 29, I believe that it's broad enough for him to operate within. And if one may read it, it says a person commits a criminal offense who A, while holding a public office, corruptly or dishonestly abuses the office for private profit or benefit, or B, being a holder of a public office, acts or is found to have acted in collaboration with a person holding a public office for the latter to corruptly or dishonestly abuse the public office for private profit or benefit. So that makes provision for people who use the public office to corruptly or dishonestly enrich themselves, or, assist or collude with other persons to do the same. And maybe that is why I'm saying that I'm agreeing with my learned friend in the studio there, because you will have to take the information and then dissect it, and you will maybe begin to see that you can hold somebody under this section. But the PDS thing is still a running story.
Okay.
It is, the government says they are investigating. I think I heard you say that some people have gone to Doha or someplace.
Yes, they left on Tuesday.
Yes, to go and then and just wait. Let them finish the investigation and let the petition that he is expecting come to his table, and then he will look at what is inside in the petition, and then he will get the information that is coming from the government's investigation and see whether he will not be able to hold somebody responsible for whatever wrong may have been committed. But at this stage, we don't even know whether there is any wrong that has been committed within this PDS thing, because various people are saying all sorts of things depending on where they come from.
Okay.
So we ought to wait and see how the cloud will settle, the dust will settle, and then I'm sure that Martin may be able to find his way clear.
Now, this is not the first time that he has raised concerns about the work he ought to do and the issues that are supposed to be dealt with in his office. Indeed, some have really complained that if he had wanted 80 million, an office to set up, and you have a lot of issues to do with, you certainly will have difficulties doing all that at the same time. There are growing concerns about his ability to function in that office and play that role properly. Are these concerns too early, or they're just rightfully placed?
Oh, but I think he was appointed, I can't remember when he was appointed, but over a year and possibly a half ago. And you know, his appointment was attended by a very huge expectation from the public, the Ghanaian public. And so, you know, he's under a lot of pressure to show some results. And even the law says that within on a yearly basis or something, he's supposed to submit a report to the public, showing how many cases he has investigated and prosecuted, the number of them he has won, the convictions that have been gotten, and so on and so forth. And so he's under a great deal of pressure. And yet the infrastructure for him to work seems not to have been laid. So somehow he is somehow justified in the kind of complaints he's making.
Okay.
But I still go back and I say that he should have analyzed at the beginning to see whether there was people within the MPP, the governing MPP, were unadamant about the establishment of the office and the appointment of him as a particular person to that office before accepting. And so, because he didn't take his time, of course, if you are complaining about restrictions, those who drafted the law are the ones he's complaining against.
Okay.
Yeah, the ones who drafted the law and had it passed are the ones who he is complaining against, that they are not cooperating with him and so on and so forth. So, because there was no consensus at the very beginning, he has walked into a landmine. And I'm just praying that he can come out of it safely.
I need to leave it here. I'm still having a very bad light there. We sure should be able to reach you in the nearest future for further commentary on this one. But for now, I appreciate your concerns and the issues you've raised on this matter. And John Indebugu is a former MP for Zebila. He's also a lawyer, very long-standing in Ghana. But in studio, he has law lecturer, Justice Semsai. This matter is being redefined in a very simple way. Now, the first matter that you raised, he agrees with you perfectly about this being a rash decision that I cannot do with it when you've not seen the petition that people have before you in the first place. But he moves further to talk about whether or not right from day one, Martin Amidu knew, and he ends by saying he walked into a landmine. He hopes that he's able to come out of that particular space. He's also asking him to get a law change if he has problems with that. Are these issues you agree with? But before we deal with them from this point, you raised issues to do with the jurisdiction of Martin Amidu and the functions that he's supposed to play. Yeah. To many of us, it was broad, corruption and corruption related. Even people who were of interest in any way politically connected could be investigated. But he's saying there are limitations that are so real. Are these really true in the law?
Yeah, you quite remember that some time ago I was in this studio, but on the program for Evans, and the issue of special prosecutor came up. You see, if any person who is experienced in legislative drafting, okay, the moment you read the act, you realize that there's a situation of what we call at law clawback situation. Clawback situation is where, on the face of it, you are given something, and then underneath they claw it back.
Okay, so they take it back from you.
From you. So if you read the long title of the act, the long title is what states the purpose of the act. When you read it, it tells you legislation to make provision for investigation and prosecution and the retrieval of money from corrupt politicians. So then it appears to cover everything that we all don't like in this country, which is corruption. Then back at the definition section, they insert in about 10 specific crimes from the criminal procedure code, saying that when we said corruption up there, this is what we mean. We mean section this of this, section this of that, specific crimes.
Okay, I get you.
Then it means that something like hoodwink kind of thing came in. So that is what senior counsel was saying, that, look, he walked into a landmine. He probably focused broadly on, just like all of us, on the long title of the act, telling us that we are going to fight corruption wherever we find it, in government, in politics. And then we come back just at the end, at the tail end of the act. They tell us that, oh, when we said corruption up there, we don't mean everything. We were talking of only these ones. So that is where the problem is.
But is it not interesting? Because this is not the first time Martin Amidu has written on the Office of Special Prosecutor. Even before the bill was passed in Parliament, he actually made some proposals. He raised specific issues, but not specifically on this matter.
Let's see where the problem began. You see, when you trace these offers, you can trace it to NPP's manifesto. Yeah. Okay. And then from there, you can trace it back to the Constitution Review Commission's work. You remember that in 2010, 2011, when the Constitution Review Commission was working, the top issue was Ghanaians were fed up with the situation where Attorney General cannot or have not been prosecuting people
their
in
own
government.
People, yeah.
So then the concern was that, first, do we have to decouple the prosecutorial powers of AG from the minister? Justice, so we have an independent, prosecutor who can just pick any minister and then prosecute. Okay. Then the commission did analysis. There was a very what we call it, challenging analysis. But NPP took advantage of that inability of the commission to create the separation, and then put in the manifesto. And if you read the manifesto, it tells you specifically that an independent prosecutor. Okay. And the purpose was to the mischief to be cured by that independent prosecutor was what? To be able to prosecute persons in government of corruption. Now we have a situation where, after the law was enacted, not only is the prosecutor not independent, and it's not independent in the sense that, look, the power of the special prosecutor is hived from, is a donation by the Attorney General to him. Okay. And the Constitution vests that power in the Attorney General. What it means is that at any point in time, the Attorney General, constitutionally speaking, can, do something about that power that the special prosecutor has. So that is the first problem. Now, the second problem is this definition of corruption, which seems to be so narrow to the extent that it actually doesn't, solve the problem we intended to solve. The question is, why do you think that we have the AG, we have Yoko, why do you think people are mentioning the special prosecutor's name?
Because they feel that that's a far more independent position.
Exactly.
And with a lot of credibility to deal with these issues, regardless of the political entanglements.
Exactly. And that understanding that people have actually came from the background, this background of independent. So even today, the executive, the party in government, they always take credit, for
the setup of this office. Yeah, I mean, and as a fight against corruption.
But here we are confronted, head on with the situation of allegations of corruption, boiling and steaming right now. And we have the special prosecutor, the man in whom all of us have put our trust in the fight against corruption, telling us that, hey, don't even come here. Go to the old Joe, the AG, go to the old Joe, Iyoko, and solve your problem. Don't even come to me. Now the question is, do you think we have been successful
with the creation of
this office? I mean, if you ask me that question.
When before the office was created, there was a huge debate on Article 88 of the Constitution and what ought to be done about that particular article.
Precisely.
That article that vests so much power in the Attorney General, virtually all prosecution powers in the Attorney General in this case. Should we have dealt with that issue before proceeding to put together the bill?
From day one, some of us and a lot of senior law professors, they were clear on the view that, including the commission of the CRC, that look, it is not practicably, possible. It's not durable to actually keep that provision of the Article 88 as it is and talk of independent special prosecutor. So we should have done something more comprehensive, something more enduring by amending the Article 88. But we actually failed in that. And that is the problem we have in this country. When there's a problem, people try to take advantage of it, by whitewashing it, and then they take credit, and then 2 weeks down the line, you know how we build our roads. I listen to you a lot on your show, and you do analysis about this road. We just put something there, make it nice, we commission it, then when it rains, then we are back to square one. That is what is happening.
The real issues of
that is what this special prosecutor thing is. And anytime you try to make it, even right from when the bill was being debated, and anytime anyone tried to raise these obvious issues, either someone rubbishes you and say you don't like, you are corrupt, you are afraid to be prosecuted, and when you raise it, they rubbish you, and then now here we are. This is where we have brought ourselves. So I think, for me, there's a lot to be done. The fight against corruption, the hope that the special prosecutor brought us is actually a false hope, and quite apart from the personality, who we all know has demonstrated some level of credibility, a high one at that, over the years.
Amidu, yes.
Yes, but as you can see, he's facing serious challenges. The challenges are not just legislative, even basic implementation, resources, other equipment.
But he has 180 million allocated to his office alone.
That is the budget pronouncement, right?
Yes.
We have no evidence
that
the money has been released.
Okay.
So I think we would have to be careful how we tout this 180 million and all. And the fact that you have even let's assume that you have even released the 180 million to him. You don't do these things by just spending money. It's a whole capacity building process. And for me, it's not even more about the infrastructure than the human capacity. The human capacity, the kind of people, the quality of personnel that you need to run anti-corruption, agencies.
Of course, his office actually put up advertisements for people to sign up for it.
That is even the problem. These days, if you are, I don't know how HR, your HR people will tell you the cheapest way to actually get quality personnel is to headhunt.
Okay.
So the more, when people are looking for jobs, please.
Yeah.
So the process of selecting qualified person becomes even more expensive when you do that kind of blanket, people throw in application, people from all backgrounds will throw in the application. But if you want a quality, recruitment or quality staff, what you do is that you headhunt, you look for people, not just people who have, as we usually say in Ghana, we have some 10 years at the bar, 5 years at the bar. It doesn't matter what you have been doing for the 5 years. If you spend your 5 years cutting cane, you are still 5 years at the bar, and so the criteria, it should be 10 years at the bar. Then the person shows up with a CV, 10 years at the bar and qualifies. But so I think that it's a serious HR issue as well as infrastructure issue.
Okay.
And it's not just about the experience, but also the integrity of persons you recruit.
You recruit. Yeah.
If you want a recruitment to FBI, FBI or those other departments in other countries, you don't just look at your CV and your academic qualification, whether you are called to the bar or not. They actually conduct serious tests, IQ tests. They conduct, integrity tests, all these ones, so that the person, because this is the most, it should be the most sacred office in the country, and there's a good reason why it should be the most sacred office, because when you are investigating corruption,
you cannot be corrupt.
You cannot be corrupt. So we have a situation which is bigger than what we are talking about. We have a situation which is bigger than the lip service that we've been paying all these months, almost 2 years.
But John Indebugui raises the issue about whether there was consensus on what exactly he was supposed to do and whether or not that office ought to be established in the first place. Have we not moved beyond that?
I don't think we have moved beyond that. You see, you can always start something on a wrong footing. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that we cannot go back and correct what you did wrong from the beginning. And this point has been made, and I followed Senior Indebugui a lot on this particular, special prosecutor business, and he has been consistent from the one. He's one of the senior lawyers who have insisted from the one that, look, if you want to do the thing, do it right from the word go. Don't do this whitewashing and then take credit for it.
I see.
So the point is, it's not too late to go back. We can actually get this done, and I am surprised that as at now, okay, we still don't have any clear message from any of the political parties or people who intend to run this government, for the next 4 years on this issue. We can't pretend. I mean, sometimes we are pretending that we have solved the problem, but obviously, and
that's the problem.
The problem has not changed. It's still there, intact, as far as some of us are concerned.
Is it also true that we actually put together an office which is not comparable in terms of standard to what the other international bodies and groupings have actually put together?
Of course.
Is it true?
Very true. Look,
but it's not because we want to tailor-made something. We have to put this together in a way that suits our condition and not just follow or copy blindly what others are doing.
It depends on what we think our condition is.
Okay.
We should actually be more aggressive on this than the Western countries. Mm-hmm. Even the UN, the ECOWAS, the AU, they all have conventions and protocols on fighting corruption.
Yes.
Our standard has not even met not even the ECOWAS one, let alone the African Union, and we are not even talking of the UN, and to be specific with other European and Western countries. So the whole thing is just something that I think people should be humble enough to admit that yes, we didn't envisage to be a situation where we'll be that weak. Mm-hmm. So we can go back and do something more effective.
Fundamentally, what can be done to fix the problem now? Should we expand the powers as is being advocated here?
So, first of all, we need to work on the independence. Right now, I don't believe, from where I sit and my understanding of the law, I don't believe that this office is any different from some department under the Attorney General's office. Basically, that's what it is. It is more or less some desk. If you look at the structural arrangement, it is more or less some desk somewhere under the AG's, office. In fact, the Director of Public Prosecution, which is a department under the AG, mm-hmm. is far bigger, more serious, more vigorous than this. So if you ask me to even rearrange this,
but what you're saying is not mindful of the fact that, have you seen the 25 cases that are posted out there? The cases that it is dealing with, right from the IRGA to even ministers of state that is also investigating, that cannot be wished away.
Have you checked the number of cases at the
I'm not saying that they don't have a lot of cases too, mm-hmm. but I'm saying that these are high-profile cases, including ministers of state. The information minister is named in one of those, list as being one of the people that the man, Martin Amidu, is supposed to be investigating today.
Yeah, but what have we seen so far? I think sending a petition to the office mm-hmm. is not the end of the story. It's actually not even the beginning. And as you can see, over the period, I mean, what happened in the Yariga situation? We are still in a limbo.
Okay.
And if you take them one by one, I don't know if he has submitted his report finally for the first year, mm-hmm. but if you look at what he has in front of him now and how much work he has done, you cannot be proud. You cannot be proud of the setup. And it has nothing to do with the person at this point, as the prosecutor. Okay. I'm talking of the structural arrangement. You cannot be proud of it. I mean, the BCU case is one typical example.
Okay.
Where he is still wrestling with the traditional AG police process. Okay. Because the police said they have done their investigation.
And he believes he's supposed to be dealing with it.
And he believes that he should be dealing with it. Now, if you do this analysis, what you are going to find out is that either duplicity, which also means waste of resources, and then unnecessary tension. And these tensions, don't forget, he was some weeks ago complaining about the fact that he is not being assisted by the traditional institutions that are supposed to help him. You'll be shocked that if you investigate
some of them are represented on this board too.
Exactly. So you will probably realize that some of these conflicts are from the fact that the police think they are doing their work already. He is asking the police to come and to help him do the work that the police are doing already.
They believe they've already done. Already done.
So how much support can he get? So the whole system, the whole setup is just a confused, state of affairs. That, and I am particularly not surprised that every now and then he writes something which points out and confirms what we have been, saying all over over 10 months that we've been. This office came into being.
But to those who say, just get on with the work and stop complaining, is it legitimate too?
No.
Because virtually everybody in this country can complain about the kind of work they are supposed to do. Every office has constraints and the difficulties that are supposed to prevent them from doing their work. Can we get him doing the things he ought to do without complaining about what he cannot do?
I think those comments, those who say you should just do the work and you should keep quiet, are just being mischievous.
Really?
I mean, let's face it. Just be mischievous.
Because he's not resigned today.
Yeah.
He's not left the office.
Yeah.
He's only been given reasons why he cannot do one thing or the other.
He's not idle either. He's working. He's doing some work.
I see.
In the process of doing that work, he's saying that, look, there are structural and institutional challenges that I'm facing and almost impossible to surmount. So can someone at the top, and I believe even though his first paragraph in that epistle, as we call it, sought to relieve the president of responsibility, when you read the entire, it is only the president that can solve the problem he's complaining about.
How so?
I mean, if you complain about the IGP, you complain about the YOCO boss, you complain about AG, you complain about department and ministries not cooperating. Who has the power in this country, to call those people to order?
Don't they have individual powers as institutions to cooperate?
Yeah, but they have the powers to cooperate, but the persons who are occupying these offices are refusing to cooperate with him. It's not, the institution is not a human being, it's just a structure. So there are individuals who head them and who have what it takes to activate this institution to help him. If they're not doing that, who else in this country, apart from His Excellency, can whip those people? So I think when I read the first paragraph, I said, well, as usual, these days everyone wants to exonerate the president first before they come. I don't know why why people behave this way these days.
Because the people know who to actually direct their concerns to. They're not going to make it blanket and leave it out there with every other person because they know that people are responsible. They don't want people to hide their responsibility. Don't think so.
But the people who are responsible are the people who are not helping you.
Okay.
And there's a reason why we have authority. So if you are here, maybe you are having this interview, and you decide that instead of asking relevant questions, you'll be asking irrelevant questions, and your colleagues are complaining, or maybe your cameraman is not doing what you want, you can complain to the cameraman. If he's not doing it, you must go up.
Yeah.
So in this case, the question is, who is up there?
And you think that the final authority rests with the president?
Of course, the responsibility is
and how can he fix this specifically?
Well, there are two ways from where I sit. He has personnel issues. I mean, the problem, you can look at it from the personnel issue, which has to do with the individuals there. Why are you not whipping up your system to help him? If you don't have any reasonable explanation, he has to decide what to do with you.
Okay.
That is the personnel issue. Then the institutional or structural issues. Those ones, maybe the personnel may be willing to do it, but there are difficulties in doing it because the structures and the resources are not there.
And that requires money, right?
Not necessarily money. You see, usually money is the last thing I talk of when I'm doing legislative review of public structure, public institutions.
Okay.
Money is the last thing that I think of, because I believe in this country we simplify problems by saying, oh, we don't have the resources, we don't have money.
Okay.
So I will put money at the tail end of the discussion. So when it comes to, sometimes it's just about institutional rearrangement. So someone must investigate. And I know people in this country who have the expertise to investigate structural, we call it legal audits.
Okay.
They conduct legal audits between two or more institutions and then find out the challenges and then use legal engineering to resolve those challenges through legislative review. There are people in this country, in order not
who
to
can do that. Are the likes of you not asking too much of a man whose office is barely 2 years?
We are not. I don't think we are.
Because it's an infant institution, I mean, to all intents and purposes, compared to the Attorney General's office, compared to Yoko, even Yoko, compared to the other institutions that have been there since time memorial.
So the institution is not, like I said, the human beings that run institutions.
Yeah.
It is possible to, it's not as if you are giving birth to, it's not a human thing, it's not childbirth or a living organ, I mean, what do you call it, a biological life. You can create a company today which will be bigger, more complex, and more effective than a company that's old. So it's not as if it's a normal, natural course of life thing. You can create that institution and let it work. In fact, the essence of creating is for you to ensure that it works better than the existing ones.
Okay.
So if you create one and your defense, your excuse is that, oh, it's just 2 years, so let's wait for 50 years before we can criticize it, then there's no need to even create it in the first place.
There's a point it makes here. It says, this explains why the office cannot investigate the alleged commission of offenses contained in any draft or final 1999 forensic audit of SNIT report by an alleged minister in the government, the recent bank scandals, and these are important because in the future, these are issues, it says, don't bring to my table at all. One, the 1999 forensic audits of SNIT reports, and also the recent bank scandals and bust allegations which do not point to the suspected commission of corruption and corruption-related offense. Just give the office personal knowledge of facts to support an abuse of public office for private gain, and the office will take up the investigations. This is all that he's asking of the people of this republic. Is this something too much for him to ask of us?
You see, like I said earlier in the opening remarks, and the Senator Debrugui confirmed that law practice, and I know Senator Martin Amidu himself knows this very well.
It's experience.
Yeah, it's very experienced. So you cannot just look at something from afar,
okay,
and say that there's a case to be answered or there's no case to be answered. You see, if you look at the nature of offenses he's entitled or he has the power to prosecute, those are not offenses that you can see. It's not as if they are not felonies that you can see physically or somebody has done something. These are, because corruption itself is hidden, those offenses are offenses that you need to actually forget. You need to go beneath what is on the surface to get. So if you sit somewhere and you keep, flipping things,
in this case,
pushing things out.
Are the petitions and the petitioners the ones who are supposed to prove that really you have a case of corruption against anybody that ought to investigate? Are they not the ones supposed to prove that?
Yeah, so if I suspect something,
yes,
and I submit it to him, he's supposed to conduct preliminary investigations before coming out with anything.
Would he not be sent on a fishing expedition when people are just submitting suspicions which might not hold enough grounds for him to investigate?
There are so many levels of legal analysis.
Okay.
When someone accuses another person, you can do something. You can read the petition, and then maybe the petition is coming from is based purely on media report. And if you from international experience, international tribunals, they specifically tell you that don't bring a petition which is entirely based on media reports.
Okay.
Such petition, once you read it and there's no evidence, what the person is saying is that Joy FM said, you have to dismiss it.
Yeah, can dismiss it. Right,
but once the person brings something in addition to the media, maybe some photocopy documents, screen, shot somewhere, and then that requires a different level, a higher level of analysis to be able to conclude. Okay. And then when the person brings hardcore evidence so you cannot just sit there and be listening to news and be deciding whether this one should come to me. How can you say that the boss issue should not come to me? What if the boss has the boss issue, even though those who are involved are not?
And the recent bank scandals.
Yes, I mean, how can you conclude that they are outside your jurisdiction? This is a very complex, issue that we are dealing with. What if at the end of the day, all this happened because some minister took some money from somebody and decided that he will allow the system to go rogue? What would you say that is beyond you when your law tells you that using public office for personal benefit is a crime? You say that because this one is bank, so it should go.
There's a petition to you and those who are in the public light on this particular matter. It says, I plead with all anti-corruption and civil society members to help in enlightening ordinary members of the public about the limited jurisdiction of the Office of Special Prosecutor so that they do not lose confidence in the office for not investigating cases which are clearly outside of its jurisdiction.
Yes, so
you will take out the challenge.
I don't think that anyone, like people like us, are bound to follow his advice.
You don't think that should be the case?
I think that advice, an individual can decide that I will explain the limits of the special prosecutor's powers to the public.
Okay.
But another person may say that, look, I can tell you that these special prosecutor's powers are broad, but he's not doing it well. Another person can say that, well, I will highlight the deficiencies in the law so that those who have authority will correct it. So I don't think the suggestion that everybody who has a voice or is interested in this should go a particular way is something that is bound. I mean, I understand he wants to be helped in educating the public. He wants help, but such help, I believe, will not be even. I think we need to push. We need to highlight the deficiencies. We need to push and let people understand that what we have is not sufficient.
Okay.
And we can get better.
Mm-hmm. In wrapping up, government has already sent a delegation to Qatar to go deal with this particular matter. Would it not be asking Amidu to do a job that's already been done by an institution that's supposed to be actively doing its work? And this is a crack team, we understand.
You see, we know it's a crack team, but that team is made up of persons who are actually in charge of the situation, who were there when the situation occurred. And that is the problem I have with this whole approach. You have a group of people, ministers, who have oversight responsibilities over this transaction, telling you that there's fraud. You know, this energy minister said it. Three other ministers have concluded that there's a fraudulent, occurrence there.
Suspicion of that,
of
alleged fraud.
And who are the people investigating this? You go and find out, and they are also from the ministries. Sometimes the ministers are also involved. So in a democracy, the person who executes shouldn't be the one to check himself. That's the essence of checks and balances.
Okay.
So if you are in the process of, supervised what we call a transaction, and there are issues about the transaction, and this thing cuts across about 4 ministries. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what kind of team is going to investigate this, but that is where the independence issue comes in again. Okay. We need an independent body to conduct these investigations, and that is why the Americans are saying that, look, Ghana, be serious about this investigation. It's not a question of business as usual. We have done it, then we call ourselves and meet over it and decide that, okay, we are investigating ourselves. Then we conclude that, well, someone is cleared. There's no wrongdoing. No, that is not what Americans are telling you, that, look, this has to do with our money.
Okay.
And Americans don't let their money
think it's appropriate for us to allow the ministries dictated people to do the investigation?
No, I mean, that is inappropriate.
Okay.
It's totally inappropriate.
All right. And now that Martin can't do it, who will do it then?
I don't believe that he can do it. And there's other institutions. Let's know. We have if it's about corruption, I think Shraj has a similar mandate.
Okay.
And we have other institutions in this country that can do it. And we can actually set up. You see, another dimension to the prosecutor thing is that in the US, they don't have a standing special prosecutor. Mm-hmm. It is as and when there is an event, then they appoint someone specifically to investigate that event. And that is what some of us were even arguing for, that, okay, if you cannot even have a complete separation, then get us something like the Americans do. Give us, as and when, special prosecutor on specific issues. And this is a typical situation where you need a special prosecutor, just like Mueller has been doing, to investigate this. But to send the same people who oversaw the transaction to go and investigate it, I think there is a challenge with that. And we cannot accept it as a good faith,
Okay, I get you. Council, I'm very happy you joined us here today. Thank you so much for joining us. There's a statement from MEDA on this particular PSP. I'm sure we'll be exploring that later on. But the crux of it is that it says it has taken MEDA some 4 years to work with all stakeholders, the ECG, Identity Commission, the PURC, Ministry of Finance, Energy, and the Office of Attorney General, and the Government of Ghana Parliament, and the Millennium Challenge Corporation to follow through all the processes towards the procurement of these services. This collaborative effort culminated into the birth of the PDS and all of this. So MEDA is basically saying it did nothing wrong in all of this procurement of demand guarantees that has been deemed to have some problems. We should be exploring that in the nearest future. But thank you so much for joining us on our front today.